Jake woke up to the sound of excited voices. After 3 days of siege, he had finally gotten 6 hours of sleep. But something was different. The voices he heard were not scared. They sounded amazed. He rushed to the security room and looked at the camera screens. What he saw made him rub his eyes and look again. The Shadow Stalker pack was still there, but they were not watching the facility anymore. They were spread out in the forest, facing away from the building. They looked like they were guarding it. Dr. Lisa ran into the security room, her face bright with excitement. "Jake, you need to see this. There are razor wings circling overhead, big ones, but the Shadow Stalkers are keeping them away from us." Jake looked at the sky cameras. Sure enough, large flying predators with sharp beaks and metal-colored feathers were circling high above the facility. Razor wings were just as dangerous as Shadow Stalkers, but they hunted from the air. Every time a razor wing started to dive toward the building, Shadow Stalkers would howl and snarl from the ground. The flying predators would pull away, not wanting to face the wolves while they were united. "This is impossible," Dr. Lisa said. "Predators don't protect other species. It goes against every law of nature." Jake smiled tiredly. "Maybe we need new laws." Over the next few hours, Jake watched something that no scientist had ever recorded before. The Shadow Stalker pack was actively protecting the facility and everyone inside it. When other dangerous animals approached, the stalkers chased them away. When scavenger birds tried to steal food supplies, the stalkers scared them off. The alpha stalker positioned itself where Jake could see it through the cameras. Sometimes it would look directly at the camera and nod slightly, as if checking that Jake was still there. "It's like they're saying thank you," Dr. Lisa whispered. Around noon, Jake heard the sound of approaching ships. 3 rescue vessels appeared in the sky, coming to evacuate the facility. But when they tried to land, the Shadow Stalkers became agitated. They howled and paced, clearly upset by the new arrivals. Jake went outside to meet the rescue team. The Alpha Stalker immediately moved to Jake's side, staying close but not threatening. The other stalkers formed a loose circle around the landing area. Colonel Dan Foster stepped out of the lead ship with 20 armed soldiers. He took one look at the Shadow Stalkers and raised his weapon. "Sullivan, get away from those creatures. We'll handle this." "No," Jake said firmly. "Lower your weapons. They're not enemies." "Are you insane? Those are Shadow Stalkers. They've killed hundreds of people." "Not these ones. These ones just spent 3 days protecting this facility." Jake stood between the soldiers and the Alpha Stalker. "If you attack them, you'll have to go through me first." Colonel Foster looked confused and angry. "Marine, you're suffering from stress. Those creatures are predators. They can't be trusted." Ambassador Trill, an insect-like alien with multiple arms, stepped out of the second ship. She had come to investigate the unusual reports from the facility. "Colonel, perhaps we should listen to what happened here." Jake told them everything. How the stalkers had tested the facility's defenses, how he had treated the injured young stalker, how the Alpha had recognized him as a fellow protector instead of just prey. "Impossible, Colonel," Foster said. "Predators don't make alliances with other species." "These ones do," Dr. Lisa said. She had brought all the cubs outside to see the rescue ships. The cubs stayed close to Jake, but they were not afraid of the Shadow Stalkers anymore. Zara, the small Avalon cub who had been so scared, did something that amazed everyone. She walked over to the Alpha Stalker and gently touched its nose with her tiny paw. The massive predator lowered its head and made a soft rumbling sound. "You saved us too," Zara whispered to the stalker. Ambassador Trill was taking notes as fast as her multiple hands could write. "This changes everything we know about interspecies relationships. How did you accomplish this, human Jake?" "I treated them with respect instead of just fear," Jake said. "I showed them I was protecting something important, just like they protect their own pack. We understood each other." Over the next few hours, the rescue team documented everything. They interviewed Jake and Dr. Lisa. They recorded the Shadow Stalker's protective behavior. They watched in amazement as predator and prey species coexisted peacefully, but when it came time to evacuate, the cubs refused to leave. "We want to stay with Jake," Pip said, speaking for all of them. "And we want to stay with our new friends," Zara added, looking at the Shadow Stalkers. Commander Vex arrived, on the last ship. He looked embarrassed when he saw how well Jake had handled the situation. "Marine Sullivan, I owe you an apology. I doubted human capabilities. I was wrong." "Thank you, sir. But I have a request. I want to stay here permanently. These cubs need stability, and this arrangement with the stalkers needs someone to maintain it." "Granted," Commander Vex said immediately. "In fact, I'm promoting you to head of facility security, and I'm recommending that other nursery facilities request human guards." Dr. Lisa also chose to stay. "This is the discovery of a lifetime," she said. "I need to study how this relationship develops." As the rescue ships prepared to leave, Jake made one final arrangement with the Alpha Stalker. Using simple gestures and shared food, he established boundaries. The stalkers would hunt freely in their territory, but the area around the facility was neutral ground. Cubs and young stalkers alike would be safe there. The Alpha seemed to understand. It marked several trees around the facility with its scent, establishing the new territorial boundaries. Then it led its pack back into the forest, but not far. Jake could still see them on the cameras, resting in the shade but ready to respond if needed. That evening, Jake sat outside the facility watching the sunset. The cubs played nearby, no longer afraid. Some Shadowstalker pups had emerged from the forest and were watching the alien cubs with curious eyes. Their parents watched carefully, but did not interfere. Zara climbed into Jake's lap and looked up at him. "Are you going to stay forever?" "As long as you need me," Jake said. "Good. You're the best protector ever. Even Mama would be proud." Jake hugged the small cub gently. Around them, the sounds of the forest were peaceful. In the distance, Shadowstalkers howled softly to each other, but it was not a hunting cry. It was the sound of a pack calling its members home. 3 months later, Ambassador Trill returned with a team of scientists. They found something that would change galactic law forever. The facility had become a model for interspecies cooperation. Young creatures from multiple species were learning to understand each other. Fear was being replaced by curiosity. And in the center of it all was Jake Sullivan, a human marine who had learned that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to show your enemy that you were not really enemies at all. The galaxy was a big place, full of different species who often misunderstood each other. But on one small planet, in one quiet facility, proof existed that understanding was possible. Sometimes you just needed someone willing to stand between two different worlds and build a bridge instead of a wall. Jake had found his true calling. He was not just a guard. He was a protector, a teacher, and a bridge between species who had thought they could never coexist. And every night as he checked on the sleeping cubs and nodded to the Alpha Stalker through the camera, Jake knew he was exactly where he belonged. The siege began on the second day. Jake had not slept in 40 hours, but he could not rest. The Shadowstalkers were getting bolder. They had figured out that only one human was defending the facility, and they were starting to test his limits. Jake sat in the security room, watching 15 different camera screens. The stalkers had split into 3 groups. One group watched the main entrance. Another group circled the building looking for weak spots. The third group seemed to be planning something in the forest. Dr. Lisa brought Jake coffee and a sandwich. "You need to eat," she said. "You can't protect us if you collapse." "I'm fine," Jake said, but his hands were shaking from too much caffeine and no sleep. "The cubs are asking for you," Lisa said. "They want to know if you're okay." Jake was surprised. "They're worried about me? Zara especially. She keeps asking when you'll come see them." Jake left the security room for a few minutes to visit the cubs. They were all gathered in the medical bay, playing quiet games and trying not to be scared. When Jake walked in, they all looked up at him with big, hopeful eyes. "Are the bad animals still outside?" asked Pip, the little gentle giant cub. "Yes, but they can't get in," Jake said. "I won't let them." Zara, the small Avalon cub, did something that surprised everyone. She walked over to Jake and gently touched his hand with her small paw. "You look tired," she said in a whisper. It was the first time she had spoken to him directly. Jake knelt down to her level. "I am tired, but I'm not going to stop protecting you." "My mama was tired when the bad animals came," Zara said. "She fought them anyway. She was very brave." Jake felt tears in his eyes, but he did not let them fall. "Your mama sounds like she was amazing. I promise I'll be brave like her." Zara nodded seriously and went back to the other cubs. Jake returned to the security room with new determination. These cubs trusted him. He would not let them down. On the second night, the Shadow Stalkers made their first real attack. They hit 3 different points at the same time, trying to confuse Jake and divide his attention. The main group attacked the front entrance with coordinated strikes. They hit the energy barrier with rocks and sticks, trying to overload it. At the same time, a smaller group climbed onto the roof and tried to break through the ceiling. The third group found the underground maintenance tunnel and started digging. Jake ran from room to room, activating different defenses. He triggered explosive mines near the front entrance, forcing the stalkers to retreat. He activated electrical defenses on the roof, making it too dangerous to stay there. He flooded the maintenance tunnel with tear gas, driving out the diggers. But the attacks had cost him. Jake was using up his ammunition and power cells faster than expected. If the siege lasted much longer, he would run out of supplies. The stalkers seemed to understand this. On the third day, they did not attack at all. They just watched. Jake could see them lying in the shade, resting and waiting. They knew time was on their side. That afternoon, Jake made a difficult decision. He had to take risks to end the siege quickly. Waiting would only make things worse. Jake set up a trap near the building's water supply. The stalkers needed water, especially after 3 days in the hot sun. Jake put sensors around the water source and waited. Just before sunset, a young shadow stalker approached the water alone. It was smaller than the others, probably not fully grown. It moved carefully, but it was clearly very thirsty. Jake's trap worked perfectly. A net dropped from the trees and caught the young stalker. The creature yelped in surprise and fear as it was pulled off the ground. Jake could have killed the trapped stalker easily. That's what the creature expected. But Jake had a different plan. He approached the trapped stalker slowly, keeping his weapon visible but not pointed at the creature. The young stalker snarled and snapped at him, but Jake could see fear in its yellow eyes. "Easy," Jake said in a calm voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." Jake examined the trapped stalker carefully. It had a cut on its front leg from running through thorny bushes. The cut was infected and causing pain. That's probably why it had taken the risk of approaching the water alone. Very carefully, Jake cleaned and bandaged the creature's wound. The stalker stopped struggling and watched Jake with confused eyes. No prey had ever helped a predator before. When Jake finished treating the wound, he cut the net and freed the young stalker. The creature could have attacked him then, but it just stood there, staring at Jake with those yellow eyes. "Go on," Jake said. "Go back to your pack." The young stalker limped away toward the forest. Jake watched it go, hoping his gamble would work. An hour later, the entire Shadow Stalker pack emerged from the forest. They formed a line at the edge of the trees, all facing Jake. In the center of the line stood the largest stalker Jake had ever seen. It had gray fur mixed with black, scars all over its body, and eyes that looked ancient and wise. This was clearly the pack leader, the alpha that made all the decisions. It walked forward alone, stopping just outside the energy barrier. Jake could see intelligence in its eyes and something else. Curiosity. Jake stepped outside the facility's defenses. Dr. Lisa shouted at him through the communication system, telling him not to go out there, but Jake knew this was his only chance, to end the siege without more violence. Jake and the Alpha Stalker stood 10 feet apart, looking at each other. Neither moved, neither attacked. They were two predators taking each other's measure. The Alpha Stalker was bigger and stronger than Jake. It had claws and teeth that could kill him in seconds. But Jake stood his ground without showing fear. He had learned long ago that showing weakness to a predator was the fastest way to die. For 5 long minutes, they stared at each other. Other stalkers watched from the forest edge. Inside the facility, Dr. Lisa and the cubs watched through cameras. Finally, the Alpha Stalker did something unexpected. It sat down, like a dog waiting for instructions. Then it made a sound that was not quite a growl and not quite a whine. It was a sound of recognition. The Alpha had seen something in Jake that it respected. Jake was not just prey defending territory. He was a protector, like the Alpha itself. They were different species, but they understood each other. Jake slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out one of his emergency ration bars. He broke it in half and tossed one piece toward the Alpha Stalker. The creature sniffed it carefully, then ate it. Jake ate the other half, showing the Alpha that they were sharing food as equals. It was a gesture of respect between two leaders. Thus, Alpha Stalker stood up and walked back to its pack. The other stalkers gathered around it, and Jake could see them communicating with small sounds and gestures. After a few minutes, the entire pack melted back into the forest. The siege was over, but Jake knew this was not really a victory. It was something much more rare and valuable. It was understanding between two very different kinds of hunters. That night, Jake finally slept. And for the first time since arriving at the facility, the cubs slept peacefully too. 3 days passed without another shadow stalker sighting. Jake used the time to prepare. He studied every recording of predator attacks he could find. He learned how shadow stalkers thought and moved. Most importantly, he learned they could be fooled. Jake set up new defenses around the facility, but instead of just making walls stronger, he made the building look more dangerous than it really was. He put up fake weapon systems that looked real from far away. He spread human scent around the perimeter so predators would smell him everywhere. He even played recordings of human voices at night to make it sound like there were many guards. The cubs began to trust him a little more. Zara still hid when he came near, but she watched him from safe distances. The other cubs asked him questions about Earth and humans. They seemed amazed that humans ate both plants and meat. "Does that make you strong?" asked Pip, one of the smaller, gentle giant cubs. "It makes us adaptable," Jake said. "We can survive in many different places by eating different foods." Dr. Lisa Brown was impressed with how calm Jake stayed. "The Catherian guards were always nervous," she told him. "They jumped at every sound. You seem relaxed." "Being nervous doesn't help," Jake said. "Fear makes you make mistakes. Predators can smell fear." On the 4th morning, Tony Walsh arrived with supply deliveries. Tony was a big man who flew cargo ships between different facilities. He had scars on his arms and looked like he had seen many dangerous things. "You're the new guard?" Tony asked Jake. "Just one guy?" "Just one guy. Is that a problem?" Tony laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Friend, I've been flying supplies around this sector for 5 years. I've seen what shadow stalkers do to places like this. One human won't be enough." "What happened to the other places?" 3 nursery facilities hit in the last 2 years, all destroyed, no survivors." Tony's voice got quiet. "They don't just kill the cubs. They play with them first. Shadow stalkers are smart enough to be cruel." Jake felt anger build in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Maybe they just haven't faced the right kind of opposition." "Maybe, but I got bad news for you. Command intercepted Shadow Stalker pack communications 2 days ago. A big pack is moving this way. Maybe 15 or 20 adults." Jake's blood went cold. 15 Shadow Stalkers was an army, not a hunting party. "How long until they get here?" "Best guess? Tomorrow night." That evening, Jake called Commander Vex on the communication system. "Sir, I need immediate evacuation for the cubs. We have a large predator pack incoming." "Negative," Commander Vex said. "No evacuation ships available for 3 days. Emergency at the mining colony. You must defend the facility." "Sir, I'm one person against 15 Shadow Stalkers. I need backup." "No backup available. All military units are dealing with the mining emergency." "You have your orders, Marine. Protect the cubs." The communication ended. Jake stared at the blank screen. He was alone with 12 helpless cubs and a pack of intelligent predators coming to kill them all. Jake spent that night preparing for war. He moved all the cubs to the safest room in the building. It was the medical bay, which had thick walls and only one entrance. He gave Dr. Lisa a weapon and taught her how to use it. "I've never shot anyone," Lisa said, her hands shaking. "Hopefully you won't have to," Jake said. "But if something happens to me, you protect those cubs no matter what." Jake set up his main defenses in the hallway outside the medical bay. He had mines that would explode when stepped on. He had automated guns that would fire at movement. He had smoke grenades to confuse attackers, but his real weapon was his mind. Jake had studied how shadow stalkers attacked. They relied on fear and confusion. They expected their prey to panic and run. Jake would not give them that satisfaction. The next evening, as the suns were setting, motion sensors started going off, all around the facility. Jake watched the camera screens and saw shapes moving in the forest. Many shapes. The pack had arrived. Jake activated the building's emergency lockdown. Metal barriers covered all the windows. Thick doors sealed shut. Red warning lights flashed throughout the facility. To anyone inside, it felt like being in a spaceship under attack. The cubs were terrified. They huddled together in the medical bay, making small crying sounds. Zara pressed herself against the wall, shaking with fear. "It's okay," Jake told them. "I won't let anything hurt you." But Jake was not sure he could keep that promise. The shadow stalkers did not attack right away. Jake could see them on the cameras, moving around the building like ghosts. They were testing the defenses, looking for weak spots. Sometimes one would dart forward and touch the energy barrier, then jump back. They were learning what the barriers could do. Around midnight, the real testing began. 3 shadow stalkers approached the main entrance. They moved carefully, staying low to the ground. One of them had scars on its face and walked like a leader. The scarred stalker sniffed the air around the entrance. It could smell Jake's scent, which Jake had deliberately spread there. The stalker's ears went flat against its head. It made a low growling sound and backed away. Jake smiled grimly. The stalkers could smell that a human was here, but they did not know what that meant. Humans were new to this part of space. The stalkers had never fought one before. Over the next hour, different groups of stalkers tested different parts of the building. They tried the windows, the roof, even the underground, maintenance tunnels. Each time, they found Jake's defenses and retreated to think about what they had learned. Jake realized the stalkers were more cautious than he expected. They were not just mindless killers. They were intelligent hunters who did not want to take unnecessary risks. That gave Jake an idea. If the stalkers were cautious, he could use their caution against them. He began making noise in different parts of the building, making it sound like there were many humans inside. He played recordings of human voices arguing about tactics. He even triggered some of his own alarms to make it seem like he was setting up new defenses. By morning, the shadow stalkers had pulled back to the forest edge. They had spent all night testing the facility and learned nothing useful. Jake could see them through the cameras, lying in the shade and resting. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The stalkers were patient. They would keep testing until they found a way in, and Jake was just one human with limited supplies. The real battle was still coming. Jake woke up before the suns rose. He had always been an early riser, but this planet's day was longer than Earth's. He got dressed and went to explore the facility while it was quiet. The building had 3 levels. The cubs lived on the 2nd level. The 1st level had storage rooms and equipment. The 3rd level had offices and communication rooms. Jake walked around each level, checking every door and window. He made notes about weak spots. Dr. Lisa Brown found him in the kitchen, making coffee. She was a thin woman with red hair and tired eyes. She looked like she had not slept well in weeks. "You must be Jake," she said. "I'm Lisa. I take care of the cubs." "Nice to meet you, Doc. How long have you been here?" 6 months. I came to study how different species interact when they're young. Instead, I spend most of my time keeping them from being too scared to eat." Lisa poured herself coffee. "Commander Vex says you're our new guard. Just you?" "Just me. Tell me about the cubs. What do they need?" Lisa sat down at the table. "They need to feel safe. Most of them have nightmares. They wake up crying for their parents. Zara is the worst. She barely talks anymore. The small Avalon cub, I saw her yesterday. She was the only survivor from her family group. She hid under her mother's body for 2 days before rescue teams found her. She's been here 3 months, but she still expects the shadow stalkers to come back." Jake drank his coffee and thought about this. Maybe she's right to expect them. This place is like a restaurant menu for predators. Soft, helpless prey all in one location. "That's not helpful," Lisa said, but she did not sound angry. She sounded worried. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to understand what we're dealing with. Tell me about these shadow stalkers." Lisa pulled out a tablet and showed Jake pictures. The shadow stalkers looked like wolves, but bigger. They had black fur, yellow eyes, and teeth like knives. Their legs were longer than wolf legs, built for running. "They hunt in packs of 10 to 20, Lisa said. "They're smart. Some scientists think they're as smart as humans. They use tools sometimes. They can plan attacks." "How often do they attack places like this?" "Every few months. Usually they hit supply convoys or small settlements. But last year they attacked a nursery facility on the other side of the continent. Killed everyone. Jake studied the pictures. The shadow stalkers looked dangerous, but they also looked like they followed patterns. Pack hunters always did. Do you have recordings of their attacks? Some. Why? I want to understand how they think. If I can predict what they'll do, I can stop them. Lisa showed Jake video recordings from security cameras. He watched shadow stalkers attack a convoy of trucks. They worked together like a military unit. Some stalkers distracted the guards while others attacked from behind. They moved fast and hit hard. See how they test the defenses first? Jake pointed at the screen. They send one or two to probe for weak spots. Then they pull back and plan their real attack. The Cytherian guards knew this too. It didn't save them. The Cytherians fought like soldiers. Stand and fight, defend the position. But predators are different from enemy soldiers. They think different. After breakfast, Lisa took Jake to meet the cubs. They were eating in a large room with soft chairs and warm lights. When Jake walked in, they all stopped eating and stared at him. Jake had forward-facing eyes like a predator. He had teeth that could eat meat. To the cubs, he probably looked dangerous. But he sat down slowly and spoke in a quiet voice. Hello, I'm Jake. I'm here to keep you safe. The cubs did not answer. They pressed closer together. Zara hid behind a bigger cub. It's okay, Lisa said to the cubs. Jake is nice. He won't hurt you. One of the crystal-winged cubs, who looked like a small dragon made of blue glass, spoke in a high voice. He has hunter eyes. Yes, I do, Jake said. But I hunt things that want to hurt you. I don't hunt you. This seemed to confuse the cubs. They whispered to each other in their own languages. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the fear. Jake spent the morning watching the cubs play. They were gentle with each other. When one cub was sad, the others tried to cheer them up. When one was scared, they all gathered around to protect them. They were like a family, but they were also helpless. Their claws were small and dull. Their teeth were flat, made for eating plants. If shadow stalkers came, the cubs could not fight back. That afternoon, Jake went outside to check the facility's defenses. There were motion sensors around the building, energy barriers that could stop small animals, cameras watching the forest. It was decent equipment, but not enough. Jake walked around the building's outside walls. He found places where predators could climb up. He found blind spots where the cameras could not see. He found weak points where determined attackers could break in. Then he walked into the forest. He wanted to see the facility from a predator's point of view. He moved quietly, like his grandfather had taught him when they hunted together back on Earth. The forest was beautiful, but dangerous. The trees grew close together. There were many places to hide. Strange animals called to each other with sounds Jake had never heard. Some sounded friendly, others did not. After an hour of walking, Jake found what he was looking for: fresh tracks in the soft ground. Four-toed paws with claw marks, shadow stalker tracks. The tracks were 2 days old, but they showed that shadow stalkers had been watching the facility. Jake followed the tracks to a hill that overlooked the building. From here, a predator could see all the entrances and exits. Jake knelt down and looked at the view. If he was a shadow stalker planning an attack, this is where he would come to, study his target. The tracks showed that at least 3 different stalkers had been here. They had watched the facility for hours. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about the tracks. The shadow stalkers knew about the facility. They knew about the cubs. They were planning something. Around midnight, motion sensors went off. Jake grabbed his rifle and ran to the security room. On the cameras, he could see movement in the trees. Something large and dark was moving through the forest. Jake watched the cameras carefully. After 10 minutes, he saw it. A single shadow stalker stood at the edge of the forest, looking at the building. It was not attacking. It was studying. The stalker stayed for 20 minutes. Then it disappeared back into the trees. Jake checked all the cameras, but it was gone. Jake realized this was just the beginning. The shadow stalkers were not random hunters looking for easy prey. They were intelligent predators planning a specific attack on this facility. And somewhere in the building, 12 small cubs slept peacefully, not knowing that death was watching them from the forest. Jake Sullivan stepped off the transport ship and looked around. The planet was nothing like Earth. 2 suns hung in the purple sky, and strange trees with silver leaves grew everywhere. The air smelled sweet but wrong. He carried his gear bag and walked toward a large building made of white metal. A tall alien with green scales and yellow eyes waited for him. The creature wore a blue uniform with shiny badges. It looked like a lizard that learned to walk on 2 legs. Jake had seen many aliens before, but this one seemed nervous. "You are the human guard?" the alien asked. Its voice sounded like gravel in a bucket. "Yes, sir. Marine Jake Sullivan reporting for duty," Jake said. He stood straight and saluted. The alien did not return the salute. "I am Commander Vex. I run this facility. We asked for a Catharian Guard unit. They are large and strong. Instead, they sent us 1 human." Commander Vex looked Jake up and down. "You are small." Jake was 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. He had muscles from years of training. But next to Commander Vex, who was 8 feet tall, Jake did look small. "I may be small, sir, but I know how to do my job." "We will see," Commander Vex said. He turned and walked toward the building. "Follow me. I will show you what you must. Protect." They walked through doors that opened by themselves. Inside, the building was bright and clean. The walls were white, and soft music played from hidden speakers. It felt more like a hospital than a military base. "This is the nursery facility," Commander Vex explained. "We care for young aliens whose parents died in wars. The cubs come from peaceful species. They eat plants and do not fight. But this world is dangerous. Many predators hunt here." They walked down a long hallway. Through windows, Jake could see rooms full of strange plants and colored lights. In one room, small creatures that looked like purple deer were sleeping on soft beds. In another, tiny aliens with fur and big eyes played with floating toys. "How many cubs are here?" Jake asked. 12 total. 4 different species, all very young, all very scared. Commander Vex stopped at a large window. "These are the Avalon cubs. Their parents were killed by shadow stalkers 3 months ago." Jake looked through the window. 6 small creatures sat in a circle. They had soft brown fur, long ears, and gentle eyes. They were about the size of human children. One cub was smaller than the others. It had white patches on its fur and seemed sad. "The small one is Zara," Commander Vex said. "She does not eat enough. She cries at night. The others try to help her, but she is still very scared." Jake watched Zara. She reminded him of a deer he once found injured in the woods back home. He had nursed it back to health and set it free. "What happened to their parents exactly?" "Shadow stalkers are pack hunters. They are smart and fast. They attacked the Avalon settlement during the night. The parents fought back, but—" Commander Vex made a gesture that probably meant death in his culture. "How big are these shadow stalkers?" Jake asked. "About your size, but faster. They have sharp teeth and claws. They hunt in groups of 10 or more. They are the reason we need guards. Here," they continued walking. Commander Vex showed Jake the other cubs. There were Misty Folk cubs that looked like small clouds with eyes, Crystal Wing cubs that were like tiny dragons made of glass, and Gentle Giant cubs that were already 4 feet tall but still babies. "Where are the other guards?" Jake asked. "You are the only guard," Commander Vex said. "Before, we had 2 Catharian warriors. They were killed last month protecting a supply convoy." Jake stopped walking. "I'm the only guard for 12 cubs?" "Yes. The Galactic Protection Council says 1 human should be enough. They say humans are creative fighters." Commander Vex did not sound like he believed this. They reached Jake's room. It was small but clean. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the forest. "Your equipment is already here," Commander Vex said. "Motion sensors, energy barriers, communication, devices, standard protection gear." Jake looked at the equipment. It was good stuff, but it was made for defending a fixed position. He thought about the shadow stalkers. Pack hunters were smart. They would test defenses and find weak spots. "Is there a doctor here?" Jake asked. "Dr. Lisa Brown. She is human. Like you. She studies the cubs and keeps them healthy. She will show you around tomorrow." Commander Vex left Jake alone. Jake unpacked his gear and set up his weapons. He had a plasma rifle, a sidearm, and some grenades. He also had things the aliens probably did not expect. A knife his grandfather made, a small medical kit, some Earth candy bars. As the sun set, Jake heard soft crying from somewhere in the building. It was a sad, lonely sound. He thought it might be Zara, the small Avalon cub. He wanted to go comfort her, but he did not know if that was allowed. Instead, Jake went to his window and looked out at the forest. The trees were dark now. Somewhere out there, shadow stalkers were hunting. They were smart. They were fast. They were dangerous. But Jake had something they did not expect. He was human, and humans did not give up when protecting something they cared about. He began planning how to keep 12 small aliens safe from an entire planet full of predators.